Welcome to the Efficient Licensing webinar presented by the Mass Association of Tech Transfer Offices, the Mass Academic Spin-Out Center, and MassVentures. This webinar was recorded on Zoom on Friday, December 12th, hosted by Myron Kassaraba, with featured guests Marta Zgagcz, Senior Director at CU Boulder's Venture Partners, and Marc Sedam, Vice President of Technology Operations and Ventures at NYU. A bit about the sponsoring organizations. MATTO is the Mass Association of Tech Transfer Offices. MASC is the Massachusetts Academic Spin-Out Center, formerly known as the Mass Tech Transfer Center. And both of these are part of the MV Spin-Outs programs at MassVentures. MassVentures is the oldest public venture capital firm in the country, founded in 1978. We are a quasi-state agency under the Executive Office of Economic Development that supports the Massachusetts innovation economy with grant, founder support programs, and direct venture investments with a focus on academic spin-outs. And now, here's the recording of the webinar with some opening comments from Martin Son from Tufts and Matto Chair. Perfect. We're just going to ask Martin to before we jump in with our esteemed guests, to make a few comments.
Sure. Thanks very much, Myron. Hi, everyone. I'm Martin Son. I lead the Technology Transfer Office at Tufts University here in Boston and Medford. And I am also the chair of the executive committee of MATTO, the Massachusetts Association for Technology Transfer Offices. Just wanted to provide a few quick updates and announcements before I hand it over to Myron, Marc, and Marta. First of all, I should have known this earlier, but today is Tech Transfer Professionals Day, so congratulations. Hope we all have a moment to think about what it means on the anniversary of the signing of the Bayh-Dole Act, which has been in the news and under scrutiny in recent months and weeks. And so, yes, absolutely, the 45th anniversary of Bayh-Dole. So that's fantastic. Just quick reminder to the MATTO members, the MATTO Holiday Party, the gathering, is happening on January 9th, Wednesday, at Catalyst Restaurant in Cambridge. Please remember to RSVP. We have, I think, 70 to 80 who have signed up so far. And so encourage you to sign up as well and encourage your colleagues to do the same. It'll be another great turnout for that event. And then please also, to the MATTO members, remember to join the MATTO LinkedIn group. We'll be continuing to ramp up communications and coordination through that group. And we want to make sure that you are connected. And so with that, thanks very much. And I'll hand it over to Myron.
Great. Thanks, Martin. Let me just let's see here. I think I can change you to an attendee. And yeah, it's been great to work with Martin, and we're hoping to do some more things next year. We've had a couple of good social events, and so this webinar is sort of a beginning, hopefully, of some more topics and discussions around some important issues that we're dealing with. So without further ado, I will let Marc and Marta provide just a brief introduction, and then we can jump in. So Marta, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm the Senior Director for Venture Partners at CU Boulder. That's our technology transfer office at CU Boulder. And our, office is maybe actually I should go back a few years to provide some historical context about our office first. And I would say that the story really begins 25 years ago when I spun out my first company and worked with technology transfer offices at that time. And probably needless to say, my experience has not been the same as I think our startups experience with is our startups experience with our office right now. That was back in early 2000s, 20 years after Bayh-Dole. I think we were still a little bit figuring out what to do, and definitely the offices were not super startup friendly. When I came to the other side of the licensing agreement, that was my mission was to figure out how the tech transfer office at CU Boulder can better support startup founders and really to help capitalize on that as well, because I think that we as universities, as tech transfer offices, maybe we're missing out a little bit on our startup successes and leaving some opportunities for more startup creation. And so that was really the impetus behind it. When I first started, we were doing an average 4 startups a year out of I think 400 million in research at that time. And so in 2016, we really set out to change that. And so the program that we'll be talking about today, the Licensing with Ease, is one of the programs that we developed to help with that.
Terrific. Thanks, Marta. And Marc,
Hey,
I think you're
Mark's,
you're known to many of us here at Matto.
yeah, I'm vaguely knowable to the folks at Matto. So as a former, we used to refer to ourselves at UNH as the auxiliary, just to the north in the attic. So yeah, I think I know a lot of folks on the call. Currently at NYU and NYU Langone Health, but previously at the University of New Hampshire. So lived in the ecosystem and prayed for the day that capital crossed the Charles River. So very different. It's a very different environment at NYU. So I've been there for 4 years. There's a lot of we could talk about it in the question thing, like a lot of growth and oversee a $1.5 billion research enterprise that is global. So we manage the commercialization for our campuses and our medical school, the campus at Washington Square, the engineering school in Brooklyn, and then our campuses in Abu Dhabi and Shanghai, which also do, Abu Dhabi does about $110 million in research, so it's a lot bigger than you think. And Shanghai, we're just not going to talk about Shanghai. So a couple of years ago, we did institute what we call it an express license. It's very similar, I think, to a few of the ones that have gone around the country, including Carolina. And we've had actually really good success with it. I was, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but I was surprised at how well received it was. I was surprised at how easy it's been, and it was honestly, it's been a good experience and helped us with some PR issues, particularly in our engineering school and the computer science faculty who just want to move, quicker. So you don't have people who are doing AI who get lapped 5 times by the time you negotiate a license. So you can get something done quickly and they feel like they're at pace. So we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Terrific. Thanks, Marc. Trying to make licensing IP more efficient it's not a new topic. Various institutions have been using some variant of an express license for years. There were efforts like the Bolt term sheet and license template. We here in Massachusetts are doing pretty well with spin-out formation with 80 to 100 per year across about 15 institutions. But speaking with sort of my state economic development hat on, we do see a greater opportunity to commercialize the research at our universities and academic medical centers. And so we want to see more academic spin-outs formed and growing in the Commonwealth. And honestly, the licensing topic comes up very frequently as something that is not perceived to be necessarily founder-friendly or easy. And so we started this conversation. Tech Pipeline hosted a meeting here in Boston about 6 weeks ago, and we started the conversation. I think Jen and Amy Rose were on that panel, and there's a lot of interest in learning more about different approaches to efficient licensing. And so we appreciate both of you joining us and sharing your experiences. As you said, Marta, CU Boulder's had some great success in generating spinouts. I think you've done more than 30 each year for the past 2 years. And I know you've got a number of different programs that I think combine to to drive that number. But how important do you think your licensing with ease program has been to your success?
hmm So it's not easy to parse out which one in particular was important. I would say that the licensing with ease was one essential program that really helped that success. So we had one kind of a record year, and but record year of 35 companies, and our average 5-year average is I think 2022, something like that. So it's definitely a steady growth with that one, one bigger number, but it's one, I would say that this is one program that had to be there because it allowed us to maybe change the view and change the perception that a tech transfer office is difficult to work with. And it, in the beginning of the program, I think it started changing that perception that like, hey, if I engage with this office, if I take those first steps, I know what's waiting for me. I know what's going to happen if I do want to launch a startup, and I know what the terms are going to be. I know that they were verified, and I think it helped to actually encourage people to go on that path altogether. And if you don't have anything in the pipeline, then you're not going to have startups at the end. And so I think that was essential to start building that pipeline and showing the transparency, and that our office is, willing and easy to work with.
Yeah, predictability and transparency, I think, are words that we hear a lot from the community. So we've spoken in the past, and I know you worked with OUP and others in the Boulder ecosystem to set up the licensing with these. How did you end up with the terms and options that you're offering?
Yeah, great question. So we started with some, of our own, so some of our own historical practices, some of the concerns that have been raised over the years, and so addressing those concerns with the terms we were offering. We, of course, used the OUP comps that they provide, autumn comps, and so on, and then set the numbers that, we believed at that time, okay, these are going to be, even more favorable than, let's say, your average deal that you can expect. And then we verified. So we had the set of the terms that went from there were several choices, and went from that addressed different concerns that we've been hearing about, and then we verified that with OUP and other VCs, as well as law firms that represent our startups, that are the big law firms that are tasked with actually helping them with fundraising, exits, and so on. So that way they know that those terms were actually verified not just by the VCs but also by the law firms. So that's how we came up with them.
Yeah, and you ended up with an options model where you've provided some choices. Can you talk a little bit about those various options and why you decided to go with that type of an approach?
Yeah, great question. So we have 3 major choices for the patent licenses that go from aligned to equity free. So we have an equity free, blended, which is your standard deal, and then aligned. And the reason that we did that was because these address the common concerns, right? So you want to have the aligned model because that is heavy on the equity. So the aligned model is heavy on the equity. Apologies, I talk about it as if everybody had seen it, had seen the table, but the aligned model, as maybe the name suggests, is the one that is heavy on the equity, and there is very minimal royalty that kicks in after 20 years. after 20 million sales, and the equity free is heavier on the royalty and no equity. And we know that VCs, they like the aligned model, right? They like lower royalty. At least, they're like, sure. This is also with exits, right? If a company is planning on raising money and exiting at some point, they tend to go for, can you take more equity and lower that royalty, or can we buy out the royalty? And then there's the other founder that is really attached to the equity, not always for the right reason, but they're attached to their own equity and they don't want to give it up. And so this, allows them to have some control over their choices, and ultimately makes the negotiation easier.
Excellent. So a couple more questions for you, and then we'll put Marc on the spot. So, have you had to make changes, since your original program, and it's things that you thought were going to be acceptable, either to founders or to investors that you've had to modify?
Yes, good question. So before we launched the program, we did. So we came up with the numbers, and then we ran them by our partners, and we did make modifications. So one notable example of that was we sent our software and software patent deal to there are two versions of that, to some local VCs that invest in software startups, and they said no royalty. And so we ended up doing just an equity deal for our software and software patent startups.
Gotcha. And
Yeah.
have you had any sort of resistance to the sort of non-negotiable, where people want to go fiddle with with
Oh yeah.
those numbers, and how have you dealt with that?
Yeah. So, yes. So for sure, companies tend to look at it as a starting point and say, okay, so they cherry pick, right? There's a tendency to cherry pick, like, I'm going to take the royalty from this one and I still want the no equity. Or they will go for the equity-free version, and then they start negotiating the royalty and saying like, oh, how dare you charge us, 3% royalty. So that definitely comes up. And this is actually where having the choices also really helps, because rather than, being kind of like pushed in this direction, you get to redirect them like this way into a different model. So if the royalty is an issue for you, look at this. There's another choice for you that has minimal to no royalty. And so that really eliminated the ammunition, let's say, where they try to say like, oh, your royalty is too high, because we do have another choice. And so this is one of the common things that companies try to negotiate, is, they pick the equity-free version and then negotiate the royalty. They also sometimes try to negotiate the equity, or negotiate away the royalty from the equity-free, and have methods of dealing with that. But overall, I think it really does cut down on the negotiations, but it has to be because your team is really knowledgeable about why, and really, willing to sell this and stand by the numbers and stand by the license terms, and say, this is the best deal. that we have, and we're not going to move, but we have all these other options for you if this one does not work for you. So it really helps to cut back on those
Great.
situations.
And last question is that I know we've spoken in the past. You don't have or do you now have a standardized license template or very
We're
close?
this close. We're this close. So so we do have a agreement that I would say is a template. And that arose from years of negotiating that template. So we have our old template. We do not start with that anymore. So we have a template that we start with, that we negotiated with the one major law firm that represents our startups. Over the years, we've learned a lot. We've gotten feedback from them, different situations that we had to handle, right? Like we had enough startups to kind of have that experience with the different terms, and we really revised it so that a company can take that template and sign it if they want to, right? So in fact, when a company comes to us and says, hey, how long is it going to take to do a deal? And well, if you pick your ease license, and then you sign the agreement, then 2 days, right? If you want to negotiate and push back on those terms, then however long it takes you to do those things. But yeah, so I would say that we have a template, but it's not something that I would say we're going to be 100% rigid about, because we do understand that new situations come up and we have to sometimes be flexible. But we do stand by that template.
Great. Thank you, Marta. That's
Mhm.
it's a really the work that you guys have been doing has been inspirational, and I think you're setting a high bar for others to shoot for. So
Thank you.
Marc, the self-proclaimed breaker of status quo, what did you find when you arrived at NYU, and what motivated you to pursue the express license?
Yeah, so NYU's by the way, the sun is setting behind me, so I look like a ghost. So NYU historically has been really productive. Actually, up until September 1st, we were the top grossing tech transfer office in the United States over the past 20 years. So we've had a lot of success. But I think when I got there, the feedback I got was that things were really slow, that the usual things that we all hear. Everything is too slow, everything takes too much time, you're too harsh, to this, to that. Some of that I found to be true. We are actually, to piggyback on the last question that you just asked, Marta, is we're in the process of streamlining our license templates too, and stripping them down kind of to the essence, because the line I always use about licenses is it's the sum total of every mistake your office has ever made. So, oh, well, we didn't understand this, so let's put 5 pages in about dealing with this one issue that'll never happen again. So habitually, as I've been in tech transfer for a long time, is like every 5 to 10 years, I usually say, okay, look at it, strip it down to the ground, and build it back up again. The challenge, the reason and I'd like to say that the express license was my idea. It wasn't. It was actually a guy who handled our engineering technologies. And that was the place where we just got a lot of heat. Like everything was too slow. People felt like we weren't being responsive enough. And I would say that was probably true. We probably negotiated our physical and computer science technologies the same way we negotiated our our life sciences technologies. And the upside of those deals are very, very different. And so he came and said, why don't we try one of these express license thingies that we heard about? And I'm like, sure. So we originally decided to put it in because we have a really strong student entrepreneurship culture at NYU, from retail through science. And so we found ourselves in a position where the grad student led technologies, which, if I can be honest, sometimes we're just like, I don't know if this is going to work, so we might as well just put it out there. And it's not the ones that we feel precious about. They would come to us and say, I can't afford a lawyer. I can't afford this. I don't know what I'm doing. We had a couple situations where I honestly felt like we got too good of a deal because we were dealing with somebody who wasn't as sophisticated, and like we got a great deal. And I looked at the deal and I was like, I don't like this. This doesn't feel right. We shouldn't be getting this aggressive of a deal. And so what it said to me was like, we all like to negotiate, and we all feel like if we get a good deal, we did a good job. But sometimes getting a good deal means hamstringing the organization on the other side. So these things kind of like started to converge. And so when we instituted the express license, we said it was only for student stuff, only for things with no university intellectual property being patents. So like a software license, a copyright license, or a student ID, and they just wanted clearance. And we put it in, and it's 4% equity, 3% royalty, limited diligence requirements. It's still roughly our license template, but it's a little lighter on the liability stuff. And we immediately had 3 people take it on. Like just out of the blue, it's like, yes, great. And we had one sign it, and it's like we sent it, and we got an email back 10 minutes later with it signed. Well, this sounds great. So over the course of the next, I would say 18 months, like we don't advertise it on the website, but we offer it when people come in and we say, oh, we have this, like it's a sign it as is. We're not negotiating anything. And we stick to that. We will occasionally nibble at the edges of the agreement if they're like, my company doesn't do this thing, so can you take this piece out? We'll take something out. But generally, again, you asked Marta this question. If somebody says, well, I want a little this, we just send them, the rule is we send them the existing license template and say, start over. And, so that's our response to any suggestion of discussion. It is, okay, well, you want to negotiate, that's great. Here's the other agreement. Let's go. And then 99 times out of 100, they will come back. They're like, no, we didn't mean that. We're happy with this. So we take a little bit of a strident point of view. What was interesting was over, I would say the next year, so we implemented it, say 18 months in, we started having faculty hear about it and say, hey, can I get the express license for my deal? And what we found were in the physical and computer sciences, they were willing to sign the express license, and we were getting better terms than we were getting if we negotiated it out. Because they just wanted speed. The terms were less important than the speed of the transaction. And so kind of slowly we said, well, sure. And then we still made it no patents because we wanted to make sure because there was no reimbursement for patents and those things. And then slowly we've just kind of expanded it. And so if people come in and they, the one change we've made, if it's IP related, is we have to put in diligence terms. So some of the ones when it was light is like, there's just no, it's just software, like go with God. Make it happen. I hope it works. But as it came with things where we put in IP, we would add some diligence stuff. And then we've started to, for those things, like adding an exit fee, like a point, whatever. I don't even remember the number. It's like 0.9 or 0.5%. But honestly, it's really improved the communication with those groups. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback about it. So it's worked from a PR perspective. And those companies are no worse off. So when we've signed deals, they seem to, it's not like we look at the deals and the express licenses never get capitalized and the regular deals always get capitalized. They actually have no problem raising money, and it's been a net positive. I'm actually shocked at how well it's worked and how little pushback we've had from anybody. And then like Marta said too, is we are getting some pressure for equity only deals on software. I'm not at the point where I'm willing to say no royalty if we have patents involved. If you don't want to pay a royalty on the patent, don't license the patent. So I'm just not there yet, but we'll see.
Did you have any pushback from your team and from, we've heard from certain offices here that, people obviously take pride in the job that they do and to understanding the technology and trying to optimize. Have you seen folks in your team that are like, well, wait a second, this is, yes, it's easy, but it's not reflective of what I want to do as a licensing professional.
Yeah, I mean, what you're really saying is, if we can just do standard agreements, what is my job and will I have one? Yeah. I mean, we definitely got some feedback like that. I think people made it, for in the beginning, it was sort of like, well, then why are we here if we can just have a click-through license? And my answer was, we can get a click-through license, do a click-through license and spend all of your energy on the 7 deals that matter. And if somebody wants to sign a click-through license, you should be grateful that you licensed it and move along. So and you gave the cheeky breaker of status quo. I mean, I think most of the people on the call know, like, the thing what we're known for at NYU now is the use of AI in tech transfer. And we're going to release probably in February or March our suite of tools that we're actually going to license. And we've taken that to the extreme. So we're using AI to negotiate license agreements. We're using AI to build our license templates from scratch. So we actually just put in we will put in a natural language. This is what I want the license to look like, and it will build it on the back end from a series of templates. So you effectively create your own drafts with a natural language request to a system. So in our culture, in our office, we've gotten away from this, well, what is my job? And gotten to, our goal is to get as many things out into the universe to make the world a better place as quickly as possible. And if somebody thinks that they know better about which ones are going to work, I would like to learn from them. Because so we're a shots on goal kind of organization. I don't want to spend 3 more months to get 0.5% more equity that might be worth approximately 0, than to just say, let's do 3 more deals in the same time and hope that one of them does well. So.
Yeah. Are there situations, Marta, I know CU Boulder, you've got biochem, but you don't have a med school. Marc, you do. Are there situations that clearly don't fit into the sort of express license or licensing with these type of model that you've run across or that you exclude? I know that some of the programs, specifically exclude therapeutics or other types of technologies that have a level of complexity to which this type of an approach is not suited.
Yeah, I mean, we don't use it for therapeutics at all. And we tell everybody it's just not on the table. The liability in therapeutics and diagnostics tends to be something that is a little more extreme. So the likelihood of a bad act that causes the universe to get dragged into a very expensive lawsuit in those areas is much higher than it is in the software and physical sciences technologies. So we don't do a lot of defense because that would be another area where liability is pretty big. So we just say that's not available. But if you want to do the spirit of the express license, we're happy to use that as a generalized template, but we're going to squeeze harder on the obligations that they have to the institution and to the federal government in those areas.
Gotcha. How about you, Marta?
So for us, we do actually have therapeutics and vaccines coming out of CU Boulder. They're likely earlier stage, unless it's a collaboration with our med school at Anschutz. But we do allow our vaccines and therapeutics to be licensed on the licensing with the ease model. However, we recently launched a new licensing, so we updated our terms, right? So this program has been around for 6 years. We've had success, adoption, it's got reputation, we have reputation. We've updated those terms. So we broke out the therapeutics and vaccines, and they are available under a different term. So we have one for non-therapeutics and vaccines, non-software, one for therapeutics, vaccines, and then one for software. They're different. So we actually have a lot of different choices. But that's what we did recently because we could. And I think that generally I'm answering my own question here, another question here, but that sometimes I get asked, when you launch this kind of a program, you're not married to it forever. You don't have to, once you publish those numbers, you don't have to continue it forever. You can update that after some time, right? We had to set our terms to be what they were because of our geographic location in the middle of the country, away from VCs, right? Away from the coasts, our historical numbers and so on. But there is a moment when you can actually update them. You don't have to, so to speak, you can change your prices, so to speak.
Yeah, and it sounds, Mark, like, you NYU obviously has had a more evolved ecosystem. You've had probably more spin out activity, more commercialization activity, and so maybe the need for being promoting that type of a program was maybe a little less.
We're not
Now,
doing as much as CU, so it's we only did 20. I thought we were doing okay. No, but I mean your point's well taken, Myron. Is like I think a lot of this. I've worked in 3 different tech transfer offices in 3 different regions and 3 different cultures, and the culture of New York is about speed. It just is. I can't explain it any other way. They just want everything done yesterday. We don't have an issue with capital in the region. We don't have an issue with talent. Usually, operators can be a little hard to get, and so like legal talent is there, capital is there, facilities are there. So when people want to get going, they just want to be done in a way that I did not have that experience when I was at Chapel Hill, and UNH is a whole different beast. So I think some of it was just us meeting the culture a little bit. So you want to go fast? We'll go fast. Sign this thing right now and we're done. And that has actually I think it's helped the fact that we say we will do a license in 5 minutes if you want to, has gone a long way into people saying, oh, well, maybe it doesn't have to take that long. And we also have, we use Elucid, which I'm sure some folks on the call are thinking about, which is a click-through Amazon-like platform where we do all of our non-exclusive licensing or one click. We don't negotiate non-exclusive licenses anymore. It's all loaded on Elucid. It's one click, a swipe of a credit card, and the non-exclusive license is done. So it is a little bit a part of what we're trying to get across to people is if you've got a basic transaction that's quick and easy and should be quick and easy, we will make it quick and easy. But the things that we really believe in and that we think that there's incredible value, we want to sink all our time in those deals.
Excellent. So one more question, and then I think we'll open it up for discussion with the audience. And I don't know if I can let everybody talk, but if you raise your hand, I can enable you to ask a question. So Mark, you and I communicated about this during the process of Bolt being this Bolt effort that was a big lift, right? A lot of people and Autumn and National Venture Capital Association and other people are still promoting it. But when you really ask people whether they're using it, you typically get a response that not a lot of people are using it.
That has only 2 letters in the response. Yes.
And any thoughts on what went wrong or why that effort didn't succeed, and are there?
I don't know that it didn't. I don't know that it didn't succeed. I think it depends. It depends what you think the point of it all was. Like, yes, I think when Oren and everybody tried to do that deal, the idea was here's a template that everybody can use, and this will smooth things out. I think that's probably unrealistic because it's not Oren's fault. It's like you have public, you have private, you have rural, you have urban, like everybody's ecosystem is different. So the concept that one license rules the world probably was never going to happen. But the benefit I think it had, especially for smaller institutions, was these are normal in agreements. So that when someone comes to you and says, how dare you? I have never seen, I declare, and they start, they sit back on their fanning couch about the terms that you put in, that you could point to the US Bolt and say, look, the National Venture Capital Association feels like this is an acceptable thing to have in principle in any agreement. Just back off on the we don't know what we're doing kind of thing. I think that's really helpful. And then, I was at UNH 4 years ago. Bolt wasn't quite done, but I had seen some of the drafts. And I thought for the institutions that maybe don't have the volume but are talented, and lots of people on this call, like maybe you do 4 to like UNH, we did 1 to 2 startups a year, but to be able to have that in your back pocket and know what the right kind of terms or the right kind of structure look like was incredibly helpful. I found it at UNH because I came from Chapel Hill to UNH, that the lawyers in my state, sorry New Hampshire if you're on the call, like they didn't know what they were doing because they didn't have a lot of volume with university projects. So the assumption is like the lawyers always know the right answer and the universities always have the wrong answer. So sometimes the concept of being able to pull in a document like that to show an attorney who's maybe done 2 deals with a university in their whole lives to say this is on the table and a reasonable position to take. I think that's actually the long-lasting value, and where I've heard people say it was helpful.
Yeah, I think that sometimes here in a community like Boston, we have the attorneys who know too much, and I've had situations where certain attorneys would do the greatest hits, right? They'd combine, probably do it with AI now, of their favorite clause for every section of the agreement, and have you had any challenges in I think there's the getting the investors on board, getting the founders on board, but have you had any challenges with getting attorneys on board?
I personally haven't really, and I think it's because of a volume play of how many we do. I'm sure Boulder sees the same thing. Like, if you're doing 1 to 2 a year, the question is, do you have enough experience to land the plane? And I think when you do 20 or 25 a year, people assume that you have the skill set behind it. And the thing that I say pretty frequently is that the job of tech transfer in a large office is fundamentally different than the job of tech transfer in a small office. So I've done both, and they are not the same job. They're like 10% similar. So I think some of the push-pull with the lawyers is about who they think they could strong arm to get to agree to a position that's not reasonable versus, if you're doing 20 startups a year, it's not reasonable. So it's just easy. It's just easier to stick to your guns when you have, like both of us or all of us on the call, you've done hundreds of license agreements.
Yeah. Marta, I know that you've got a strong ecosystem in Boulder, Techstars and a number of other folks. How important was it for, and have they been supportive of the not just maybe licensing with ease, but all of the efforts that the university is trying to do to stimulate spin out activity?
Mhm. So great question. I think when I first started in this office, there really wasn't any connection or knowledge, right? So we didn't really exist. We weren't on the map. I think it was also true within the university itself. So now, because of the successes that we've seen, it really has put us on the minds of Techstars and the local ecosystem supporters, accelerators, VCs, everybody really. A lot of our events are community events. That also helps when we invite them to our events and they get to actually see the quality of our companies as well. Overall, yes, this program and everything else that we put out has been, it really has changed that.
Excellent. So I really appreciate both of your time on a Friday afternoon. I think there's some folks that I would think on the call that might have some questions.
There were 2 in the chat, Sue. So
okay.
Yes, I see that. There's a special Q&A chat. So Amy Rose.
I have been in the wrong place. All right, so
So I'm happy to answer that. Has the CU Boulder team measured time to complete a deal before and after the Express license was introduced? So there's so many variables that we have not actually measured it, but I can tell you that it has been significantly reduced. One way to look at it is with similar number of FTEs, we are doing 20 to 30 of these kinds of agreements as opposed to 4 per year. So we wouldn't have been able
Marta,
to
can
do
I
that.
ask you a slightly different question just
Yeah.
on that? What percentage of all of your startup license are the license with ease licenses?
So I think we only had 1 that wasn't since the program was introduced. So there was a little bit of a lag time at first, right? Because people are still trying to negotiate, still trying to negotiate. And I think maybe the question that I would like to answer that sometimes I am not asked is, how like what were the essential things that we did to make sure that those startups did take the deal, right? And I think I answered it in various ways, but I think that we basically stand our ground. We provide data, the other data, right? Like you said, you can take this deal or you can take this other deal, right? So this is the same thing that we do, right? It's like, okay, you want to negotiate this? Well, here's the deal that you can negotiate. And immediately everybody goes for the ease license, right? Also, Myron, you asked about the template, right? Also, our ease deal is available on our ease template. If you want to negotiate, the terms, anything that chips away at the value of that license for the university, like how difficult it will be for me to collect the money, right? For example, whether it's my job to prove something or is it your job to prove something to me? Basically how difficult and how expensive that license will be to administer and all of those things. That is an immediate no, that is not part of the ease deal. An ease deal is that template with those terms, and you have to kind of stick your ground, have all of your team on board and really knowledgeable about why and really behind it, right? Because any kind of like faltering in those conversations and in those meetings, and that's when the licensee sees a hole, sees an opportunity, and that is what makes the negotiations long, right? So maybe in the beginning, it was kind of continuing to answer that original question too, it was probably not much saving of time, but now it is a huge save of time for us.
And
So,
I would say that's the lesson of trying to do this,
Mhm.
because I know the folks at Chapel Hill, they started the express license slightly after I left. And the
Mhm.
second you give anybody oxygen on the deal,
Yes.
you don't have an express license anymore. You just have a worse deal that you're starting from. So
Yes.
when we instituted it here, the line to the staff was, it's this deal and there is no other deal.
Mhm.
So you do not, the answer is just no, and
Yeah.
give them the template. And it was a training for our staff as much as anybody to
Mhm.
say, because they're just like, we all like to negotiate. So they're like, well, I mean,
Yes.
this might be reasonable. The answer is no.
Yes.
And over 18 months,
Yeah.
no became yes, no became, this is it. And then,
Mhm.
like I said, we'll nibble the edges around things that don't matter too much if it seems reasonable.
Mhm.
But like, I think you said it better than I did, which is anything that affects the value, the answer is an absolute no.
Yeah.
Any wordsmithing that somebody feels good about, whatever,
Yeah.
we'll take a couple hours and work it out.
great.
Mhm.
So Burnley from UMass,
Mhm.
Amherst asked, how are past path expenses handled in your express licenses, and are they negotiable?
Mhm. So they are reimbursable under our license. However, we will negotiate with the company at what rate they have to pay them back. So depending on how much money the company had raised, and their financial situation, we're not going to take all the money that the company raised and make them pay the patent expenses up front. So that is something that we will be lenient on with the company, and we'll work with the company to come up with the right schedule.
Yeah. Our standard is they don't pay anything for 12 months unless if the patent bill, it's unusual for us to do an express license for something where there's a massive portfolio. So the kind of the understanding is we've spent under $35,000 or $40,000 by the time it's ready for licensing, because it's generally, we get the disclosure, they say they want to do a startup, we're filing at the same time the company is going, and so the outbound expense isn't too bad. So ours is, we're not asking for money until 12 months. We'll dicker around with that a little bit if we need to. If it's, if we have $60,000 or $70,000, we might give them 18 months to pay it back. but I learned is one thing I learned from Oren was, Columbia is roughly, I think, the same volume as CU. They're in the like high 20s, low 30s. And his line was always, we start them liberally and we kill them quickly. And that's kind of where we're moving to, which is, look, if you can't pay us back in 18 months, then you probably shouldn't be doing this. You need to, if you have $15,000 in payments and you say, I can't afford $15,000, you actually can, you just don't want to pay it. And as somebody, I think maybe some people know, I ran a university startup that's a spin out of it, UNC Chapel Hill. I can tell you I had the money to pay the university. I just didn't pay them because I knew that they would handle it and they would be the bank, and I would rather use the money for other things. So when people say they can't pay you, they actually don't want to pay you at all, and they'll just see how long it takes before you threaten to terminate the agreement.
Yeah, something that so we have a venture portfolio of about 34 companies, 27 of which are academic spinouts. And I always get that number wrong. Whitney will probably correct me, but I know 27 of them are academic spinouts. And we've told all of our companies that are academic spinouts that they really need to pay attention to their compliance, right, with what's going on in Washington and in general with, attacks on tech transfer, not only paying your patent expenses, but also reporting and other, diligence obligations and those types of things. I think Amy wanted to ask a question, but I'm going to just ask one more question is, I know that one of the criticisms and personal experience with an express license is that it can be perceived to be making it too easy. And some people who have deployed express licenses have put a funding qualifier on the ability to access it. So, do either of you make it a requirement that that the company that is getting, or the spin out that's getting the express license has raised funding or is imminently about to raise funding?
Yes. So we do require that the company has raised some funding, and that is something that we look at the particular situation and circumstances. Like if it's a software license, it's not going to be the same amount that a therapeutics company has to raise. But yes, we do require that.
Yeah, we don't. We thought about it, and I've sort of we're morphing a little bit, like Marta was saying. You massage it, you change your terms over time. The place where I'm coming down to is using the patent budget as the number. So it's like, rather than say you have to raise money, it's just like, well, you got to pay us back in 18 months. And if you can't pay us back in 18 months, deal's over. Have a nice day. And then, so I think Columbia did 12 months. If they couldn't pay their patent bill within 12 months, they just terminated the license completely. You could always come back and license it again. But if you can't, and this is one of those places where I hate, well, most of the people on the call are from Massachusetts, so you know what I'm talking about. Like there are ecosystems in the United States that if you can't find the money, it's probably you and not them. Like New York is one, Boston is one, San Francisco is another, San Diego. Like the money's there and the talent's there. And if you have a year and you're nowhere after a year, it probably says more about the founding team than the technology. So that is a place where we're taking a little bit of the culture of our region and saying, and if you can't find money in New York, it's probably not because the technology is bad. It's probably because the founding team doesn't have the right contacts. And so our answer is terminate and then be open to it and say, and I'm fighting with my staff about this to be transparent, is like saying, yeah, okay, we terminate it, but we'll market it. But if nobody licenses it and you want to come back and try to license it again in 6 months and you have a better beat on things, then we'll license it back to you again. But I don't like the concept of just accepting the fact that people will not fulfill their obligations of the license agreement. We're trying to get really restrictive on that. I'm sorry, Marta, I cut you off.
Oh, no, it's okay. I just want to jump in. When you said that it's not you, it's them. This is actually one of the things that having an express license helps to kind of bring to light, right? When you have this express, startup-friendly, verified deal, others can't, the company can't come to you and say like, oh no, your license is terrible. We can't raise money. based on these horrible terms, right? This is what we used to hear before. And it was, and those conversations were time consuming. They started from a negative place also because, right, you had to kind of like overcome this kind of perception. And immediately, rather than starting here, you're starting here and trying to get there in that relationship and the kind of positive, positive relationship. And here we're like, well, it's definitely not the license, right? It is not the
Right.
license that is stopping you. It must be something else. It is probably the team, or you don't have a good plan.
Right.
Great. Amy, I knew you had raised your hand. I don't know if you still wanted to ask a question or whether we should wrap up.
Sorry to keep everyone late on Friday if I'm asking a question. I guess I probably should have phrased my first question a little bit differently, which is like, what are the metrics you do measure and what are the metrics you hold your staff accountable for, like in their performance outcomes?
So in terms of right, the staff and the metrics. So we measure, we count how many agreements we did, how many startups. We count how much money our startups raised after they did the agreement with us. It's kind of like our way of somewhat measuring their success, right? That is I think I don't know if that is a question that has, or that is a problem that has been solved. How do we measure their success until they exit or have a product, right? Like what do we do in intermediate? And so the staff is measured on how many agreements they do, and actually before that, how many customers they bring to our programs. So we have all these programs that are meant to help them be good for them, help them to be successful. And if they, as soon as they kind of enter that mill and they start going through entrepreneurial training, applying for our proof of concept grants and, learning how to pitch and things like that, they become more successful. And so that's what I measure my staff on, is how many customers they bring to those programs.
So I'll try to keep my answer short. We're very metrics driven at NYU. So I do track the average turnaround time. We track the mean and median turnaround time of every type of agreement we have. So the question earlier was, after the express license, what did you see? We actually saw our median time drop and our mean time. Our median time dropped like a rock, and the mean time was dropped, but it was a little bit better. So what's happening is we're seeing more things are getting done quickly, fewer things are lasting 6, 8, 10 months, and we can see that in the data.
Mm-hmm.
We do the disclosures, patents, licenses, and startups. Those are our metrics, and so my objective is to make sure that we build out the tools necessary for people to do the easy things quickly, and to spend all of their time on the hard things. So I often say to the staff, we try to let computers do what computers do best, and people to do what people do best. So if you have a non-exclusive license or something easy, then like a human being shouldn't be involved in a non-exclusive license that you've done more than once, because you already set the terms. Just like put it up online and click through. So a lot of what we do is think about efficiency and how we can unlock the brains of our licensing staff and have them really dig in on licensing and startups and understand the technology really well, than doing the grunt work of filling in information left, right, and center. But I think we have 8 different types of agreements that we track, and we track the completion time of every one of them. And then we have an SOP in the office that we expect everything to be off somebody's desk within 48 hours. That is our expectation. So so it's like you get it in, you turn, and we have a big staff. We have a staff of 42 and lots and lots and lots of technology to help them meet those goals. But that is the expectation: is you get an agreement, it's turned around in 48 hours. 72 is sort of acceptable. Anything past 72, we get grumpy. So that the ball is always in the other person's court as best we can.
It's very quick. I tell my staff that it is definitely right. So they have 3 priorities. An agreement, when you get an agreement, that is the first thing. So immediately thank the company, set up a meeting. If you anticipate you're going to need a meeting with our attorney, and get it out that same week, get it back to the company the same week. If there's nothing in there, then, then it has to go out the next day, right? You cannot just sit on it. But yeah, we do not actually, I want to like maybe offline pick your brain about how you track the time, for your agreements. I just track them based on like how they performed before and how they perform now, right? And the expectation. And so if they're doing, 15 agreements and they used to do 2 or 4, right? That means the time has shrunk significantly and how long it takes them to do a deal. But I don't have the exact number. I'm curious how you track it.
I'm happy to tell everybody, but we're out of time.
That's why I'm saying offline. You can,
Sure.
you can chat.
Marta, Marc, great to see both of you, and thank you very much for sharing your insights. This is, I think, an important issue for all of us. I think being more transparent, predictable, approachable is going to help, get more things out of the lab and into the market. And so, this was a terrific conversation. Appreciate your time. I hope you have a happy holidays, and I don't know if we'll see both of you in Seattle at Autumn. If folks have questions, they can get them to either me or to Martin, and happy to pass them along. And thanks again. Have a great weekend, and happy holidays.
Yes, thank you
Thanks
so
for
much
the invite. It was fun.
Yeah,
All right.
thanks for having me, and feel free to chat in Seattle. I would love to meet everybody.
Excellent.
All right.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Have a good
Bye.
weekend.
Bye-bye.